What is up, my dudes? It's Pac-Man here, and today I'm bringing you guys the easiest way to control recoil in Rainbow Six Siege. I posted a video the other day, how to warm up and improve your aim using T-Hunt, and I spoke about recoil control in there a few times, and some of you guys said, hey, please make that video, so here it is, boys. This is the video. This video is probably not going to be very long today, because to be completely honest with you, recoil management isn't rocket science. It's really quite simple. It just takes a bit of practice. Okay, so without wasting any time, let's get straight into it. Okay, guys, so the first thing that you're going to want to know when it comes to recoil control is basically the distance that you are from your target, the less noticeable your recoil is going to be. Okay, so let's start off. We're using Sledge, a really pretty low recoil operator regardless. We'll just stand here. What I'm going to do first, I'm going to shoot. I'm not going to pull back whatsoever, and then I'll show you the different spreads based on range, right? So we're just shooting. So that's a pretty tight spread there regardless, with no recoil control at all. Okay, so now what we're going to do is I'll just double that roughly. Just stand over to the left, line it up. All right, and now we shoot. All right, do you see how much more noticeable that recoil is? Right, how much more noticeable that recoil is in comparison. So the biggest thing that I want you guys to try and take from this, and let's even go a little bit further out, right? Let's do it from here. And now without shooting whatsoever, without holding it down whatsoever, it's flying way off into the air. So what I want you guys to take from this is that the closer your target is, right? The closer your target is, some people say, yeah, look, I've got the best recoil control, right? Oh my God, I'm like an absolute bullet. Right, but you're standing right beside the wall, right? It's a lot harder to do that from back here. So the biggest thing that I want you to take from that is that if you're shooting a target at long range, it's going to become way more important to control your recoil. At short range, it's not as important, still relevant, but not as important, okay? Now, in terms of learning a recoil pattern, it doesn't matter what gun you're using, whether you're using, Valkyrie's gun with basically no recoil, you're using, or, Twitch's gun, the F2, with tons of recoil. How I learn recoil is the same way that I learned recoil when I first got a PC and started playing Counter-Strike, right? Or when I was playing Call of Duty back in the day. You basically just stand back from the wall, right? So you can stand a decent distance, maybe use this as a good measurement, right? First thing I do is I shoot without holding down, without trying to control the recoil whatsoever. Okay, so now that's the pattern of the bullet spray, right? So it's just dragging up and to the left. So it's straight at the beginning. So it's basically just a pretty even pull down without too much movement left. And then it starts to spray upwards and left. So that's basically the movement. You're going to counteract that with your mouse, right? So I'm going to switch up the cam so that you can see how I'm counteracting that. All right, so now, like I said there before, there's a straight pattern up, and then it tilts off higher to the left, right? It starts to increase. I'm going to be pulling down more after the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 shots, right? But I'm going to be pulling down to the left. So what I'll try and do is I'll basically do it in reverse. So it's going to look something like this, right? I'm going to pull the mouse down, and then I'm going to pull the mouse down and to the right. So I'm just going in complete opposite to the bullet spray, right? So now, when I try and control this recoil, right, I'm just pulling it in opposite. Now, I know Sledge's gun doesn't have a whole lot of recoil, but look at the difference there, right? Look at that bullet spread in comparison to, when you're not controlling the recoil whatsoever. All it comes down to is basically just going in the opposite direction of the general bullet spread without any recoil management. And so then, like I mentioned, in terms of distance, look how far back we are. If I don't control it whatsoever, this thing will fly way off to the sky, right? So it's going to be a lot harder for me to control that spread to such a fine detail where it's as tight as the spread we did over there from this sort of a distance. It's harder, right? So when I try and control this spread, I'm still going to try and do that same movement where I'm pulling down and then I'm pulling out to the right. Right, similar, sort of like that. So let's give it a go. See how much more noticeable that spread is, right? It's harder. So when you're at a distance, when you're shooting at distance, it's not as viable to just auto spray, right? So that's why at distance it might make more sense to, right? Shorter bursts. Okay, so now let's look at the SMG-11, one of the highest kickbacks of any gun in the game. One of the highest anyway, right? So in comparison to Sledge's gun, which is nice and simple, I can't show it to you right now, but nice and simple, it just kind of straight upward and to the left, nice and easy, nothing too spectacular. Let's look at a close distance. This isn't a far distance, right, to that door. A close distance, let's look at the spread with no recoil management. Boom, right? So if you really want to get accurate, that's probably not the best example. I can't really see that. But let's have a look here, right? So if you really want to get accurate with it, you can try and follow this tail, right? So you're just kind of going, you're basically pulling down, and then I'm going to be pulling left. So all I'm doing is following this trail. And that's recoil management, right? So if I really want to be accurate, my first 1, 2, 3, 4 will be down, but remember the SMG-11 fires so fast it's gonna be hard to count the bullets. So you're basically just gonna be pulling down, and then because the bullet trail starts to move right, we're gonna be pulling left slightly, and then we're gonna be kind of switching it back to the right, then back to the left, then sharply to the right, and then sharply down to the left. Right now, it's going to be hard to remember that recoil pattern, right? Because there's a lot of twist and turn. That's why the SMG-11 is super hard to fire, especially when it comes to long distance, right? It's incredibly hard to control. So with the SMG-11, especially if you're just starting out with recoil management, what I would recommend is just doing a flat, hard pull down. So aim for the head, and then just do a flat, hard pull down. As you can see, because I didn't try and shift it to the left and right, some of these bullets skew off, right? It's not just a centralized spread like it is with the L85. But it's still pretty accurate in comparison to that, right? So by just simply doing a fast, immediately upon firing, by simply doing a fast pull down, you can keep a tighter spread. Okay, so now when we're talking about Twitch's gun, you know, this is the dreaded gun. So it's saying, everyone says that Twitch's gun is one of the hardest guns to manage recoil in the game because it's got such a high kick up. And that's correct, right? I personally run muzzle brake on Twitch's gun because I don't need that many bullets usually to get to land the kill because of the fire rate, right? So I use the muzzle brake to control that initial bit of recoil. And if you guys want me to make a video based on all the attachments that I use, I don't know if they're the best, but they're just what I've gotten used to. Feel free to let me know down in the comments and I can make that happen. But when we're talking about Twitch's gun, let's just do a no spray control from short distance. Let's just do no spray control and see what we're looking at. All right, so it looks like we're pulling over to the left, which is the opposite to the way that Sledge's L85 pulled. And then at the end, it kind of, the recoil, so once we get down to that last 2 or 3 bullets, the recoil seems to just stop. So we got to be careful of that, or our last 3 bullets will just dip down lower, right? Now, at the end of the day, you're not going to be trying to just full auto spray down every gunfight most of the time. Most of the time, you should be aiming for the head regardless, so it's your first 4 or 5 bullets that are really going to matter. But, so let's try and do that, right? So from this distance, what we're going to do is we're going to pull down initially, and then I'm going to start trying to pull down to the left, okay? So to the left like this, yeah. Okay, let's get it. All right, so maybe with that, I pulled a little bit too aggressively, too early. All right, so let's try that again. All right, that's a little bit better, a little bit tighter. Right, so that's kind of how you control recoil. The easiest way to do it is to just shoot a clip into the wall and then try and mirror it. So just go in the exact opposite. Cool. All right, guys, and you know that's really it. That's the majority of it. There's no 5 tips and tricks. You know, there's nothing to it. With Siege, we don't have sophisticated aim trainers like they do for Counter-Strike and stuff. So we don't really need them though, because this is how I've done it for most games I've ever played, and it works a charm. So we're using Buck's gun right now. We're just gonna fang up into the air. Right, so it's same as Twitch's. It kind of comes to a cap at some point, but for the vast majority, you're just pulling up, and as you get to the end, you're going to be pulling slightly to the left. So what we're going to do is we're just going to pull down. All right, that's not a great recoil control spread. Let's try that one more time. That's a little bit better. Right, and that's really it. Even what I just did there. So you just have a look and you think, okay, that didn't go as well as it could have, and try it again, and you'll get a tighter spread. And you just learn the pattern of the gun. So when you're trying to aim as you're doing it, right? So let's just shoot it up. Right, so that's basically just straight up from this distance. It's basically just straight up in the air. These guys just won't give me a break. Right. But what we're gonna do is instead of like strafing, let's say if you're not strafing, if you're shooting a moving target while trying to control the recoil, you're still going to be controlling the recoil, but you're going to be pulling down almost like that, right, to control it while it's moving. So we're going to be going like that. You know what I mean? So we're keeping that at head height as best we can anyway, to the best of our degree. With practice comes perfect. You'll be able to get that even straighter than that. I don't really use buck a whole lot, so yeah, we're just trying this with what you'd so-and-so call high recoil operators. But that's really it. We're just pulling down, so let's do it crouch. So we're just pulling down and over to the right. You know what I mean? And you just practice it. That's all it is. There's nothing exceptional. There's nothing crazy. There's no rocket science, no magic. It's just practice. All right, guys, just before I leave you, there's a couple of things that I want to go over. This will work on PC. This will work on console. It doesn't really matter. PC, obviously, granted, it's easier. You're just pulling down with your mouse, so you've got a little bit more range of motion. So it's a little bit easier to kind of micromanage that, you know, those slight movements like that to get a really, really tight spread. On console, you're just going to be pulling back your right scroll wheel or your right, your right analog stick. Yeah, so that's the first thing. The second thing is there's no right or wrong sensitivity for this. Basically, lower sensitivity, you're going to have to pull on a longer motion. It's going to have to be more like a large gap that you're covering. Whereas if you're a really high sensitivity, you might only barely move down your mouse or your analog stick ever so slightly. So the higher the sensitivity, the less motion you have to move down, but also the less accurate you can be, right? So the less total tight spread you can be to an extent. There are some really, really good recoil control people out there that have, very high sensitivities. To a certain extent, recoil control on higher sensitivity is a little bit easier because it doesn't require as much movement. It's much more so just like, just like really cheeky little small movements, and you get like a tight spread. Now the third thing is each gun has its own recoil pattern, so I'd suggest doing this for some of the guns that you use the most. So just firing off and then learning the control, learning the spread. And the last thing really is that the attachments that you use in your gun, like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, will differentiate the spread, the no recoil spread of the weapon, okay? So I can't just stand here and say you need to pull exactly this amount down on your mouse just like this, and if you practice this motion you'll be able to control the recoil, because everyone's sensitivity is different. Everyone's basically, some people play on PC, some people play on console, and also people play with different attachments for different reasons. So what I would suggest to do is use the attachments that you're comfortable with, hop into T-Hunt or hop into a custom game, and do that what I just said, right? Just shoot up the spread and then try and copy the pattern. And that's it, guys. Not rocket science. It's super simple. It just takes a bit of practice. So with that being said, guys, I really hope you enjoyed this video and I hope you found some value in it. I didn't get a chance to play my placement games just yet, so I am absolutely dying to. I'm about to go hit him up with my man Brody. But, if you guys enjoyed this video, I would really appreciate it if you could just drop a like. It helps the channel out tons, and, it's good for the old YouTube algorithm. We got to keep it happy. But look, guys, I wish you all the best with all your placement matches, and I wish you a strong season, and I will see you next week. Peace.